three leading presidential candidates were among several others who attended the annual general conference of the Nigerian Bar Association in Lagos, with messages bordering on the 2023 elections and the role of the judiciary in the sustenance of Nigeria's democracy. Arise News correspondent Oba Adeoye covered the conference. Here is his report.
The 2022 edition of the Lawyers General Conference attracted a huge turnout of not just lawyers but also politicians, thought leaders, policymakers, business icons, the civil society, and others who love to identify with the learned community. Among top politicians who attended the conference are Peter Obi of the Labour Party, Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, and Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress, who was represented by his vice, Kashim Shettima. Others include the presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, Dumebi Kachukwu, and his Social Democratic Party counterpart, Adewale Adebayo. The event, themed Bold Transitions, addresses the metamorphosis required for an improved judiciary and the nation as a whole on all fronts.
Whether it is education, whether it is healthcare.
Speakers took turn to bear their minds on specific areas which they think the nation must focus on and make necessary transitions for a better future. Issues ranging from insecurity, unemployment, poor healthcare, poor education, and dwindling economic fortunes are pinned on poor leadership, which they all agree Nigeria has continued to witness over the years.
I want us to juxtapose two scenarios first.
On his part, the vice presidential candidate of the APC, Kashim Shettima, believes that the challenges of insecurity confronting the nation has continued to linger because the spending on the military is way too low and takes negative toll on the morale of soldiers at the center of peacekeeping.
At the end of July, Nigeria's population was 216.98 million people. Our GDP, projected GDP, was 445 billion. And our total number of troops was 213,000 for a population of 216 million people. The percentage of our GDP that is spent on the military, on security, was only 0.5%. And our peers across the world, Iraq, Israel, Pakistan, Turkey, they are spending between 4 to 5% of their GDP on military spending. Our spending on the military in 2021 was $3.25 billion. So using the metrics and the variables, with 1970 as the base year, the strength of our army ought to be 960,000 troops.
As far as I'm concerned, the federal government is too big.
Yes.
For Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, Nigeria has never been this unlucky with poor leadership, and advised that Nigerians must be very careful not to miss the opportunity provided by the 2023 general election. He says once that opportunity is misused, Nigeria may never get it right again.
I stated that there are 5 key areas that any leadership, forget about party, any leadership, whichever from political party, must confront these 5 issues. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have had an experience, and it is that experience that I said must be brought back. Yes, must be brought back. It is only when you have this sense of belonging that you will be able to deal with, say, the issue of security. It is when you deal with the issue of security, then you will now come to the economy. My 5 points that I enumerated are all interrelated. From unity to security to economy to devolution of more powers.
Where are we today? Nigeria have qualified to be a failed state.
Candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, is worried about the diminishing foreign exchange as characterized by especially the spate of crude theft and the inability of Nigeria to transit to a producing nation from its current status of a consuming nation. He says what is manifesting today in Nigeria is an accumulation of leadership failure over the years.
We're in a physical mess, total physical mess, because of all this. Between January this year and April, the total revenue of federal government of Nigeria is 1,630 billion naira. Their expenditure is 4,720 billion. If you minus this, we have a deficit of 3.3 trillion 100 billion. That shows almost 20% to almost 200% is the deficit. And this is the crisis you face. How did we come here? It's a cumulative effect of leadership failure over the years. Because it's 10%, I'll stop here, I would have talked about power. How did we come here? What are we going to do very quickly to come out of this? Very quickly, you need to have a visionary, articulated, competent leadership to start turning around this.
I will keep talking every election season.
Adewale Adebayo, who is flying the flag of the Social Democratic Party in the 2023 general election, took the stage to run an advocacy for an improved education, health care, and human capital development, among others. For him, Nigeria has what it takes to be a great nation. Widespread insecurity is a major concern for the candidate of the African Democratic Congress, Dumebi Kachukwu, who insists that Nigeria is already at war, and as a result, there is a need to create more synergy among all security outfits in the country.
At least, conservatively, we are losing $4.4 billion every month. And what is the amount of debt that is all we owe? Why do we have a fiscal cliff? Why do we have any of these things? If you apply simple truths, everyone who is concerned will know that we are throwing our money away with international criminals.
We must immediately get the police, the civil defense to join our military in this war. I have been to war-torn countries, and Nigeria is the only country in the world where a nation is at war and her people don't know they are at war. We don't know we're at war. Our soldiers are dying every day. And because we are far flung from the war, we don't realize that we are at war.
It involves government and involves the future of our children.
The NBA conference, which opened on August the 19th, will run till August the 26th in Lagos. The event will still feature President dinner, CJ cocktail, and the closing party tagged on Bard 5.0, among others. Oba Adeoye, Arise News, Lagos.
Adeoye, Arise News correspondent on the 62nd Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association taking place here in Lagos. Attendance, over 13,000 lawyers from all parts of the country are in Lagos, 19th to the 26th of August. And the theme is Bold Translations, focusing on political transition and the judiciary. But before I weigh in on some of the issues arising therefrom, Manuel Ufeni,
yes,
you have a shot at it.
Yes, I think the NBA conference provided ample platform for the presidential candidates of the various political parties to make their pitch. And how well they have done, whether they really put their fingers on the problem at hand, is another matter altogether. Atiku Abubakar, of course, hammering on his experience that this time around we don't need to do a trial by error, to quote him, but to go for somebody with experience. And he seemed to have highlighted some of the issues Nigerians want to hear about and, of course, have solutions to. The issue of devolution of powers. And for a man who wants to take over as the president of Nigeria to saying the federal government is too large right now. Of course, it's well documented that a lot of wastage at the center, and that many of the things the federal government bogged down itself with should actually be handled at the level of the states and the local government. So he said already he has empaneled a committee to come up with a draft review or amendment of the Constitution to devolve powers to the states and the local government. I'm sure many Nigerians, especially who have been clamoring for the devolution of powers to the federating units, will find this music to their ears. But the fact that he said there's already a committee in place, and because when there's a will, of course, there's always a way. One of the problems we have with the current administration is that the issue of devolution of power seems to be a no-go area. But so to see that somebody who wants to be president come May 29 next year is saying, look, from day one, the issue of devolution of powers will be dealt with. Of course, he talked about the issue of uniting Nigerians. That, of course, Nigeria has not been this divided. He wants to unify Nigerians. Everybody knows, of course, Atiku Abubakar has that pedigree as somebody who has wide network across the country, whether filial or political. He has wide network across the country. Yes, he can indeed be a unifying factor, and he can pursue that as an item. But coming to security, his connection between the unity and carrying everybody along, I think he needs to establish that connection very clearly. Because when there's unity, of course, and you carry everybody along, then there will be security. The bandits have not made, and those terrorists, they've not told us what they want. But perhaps we want to peep into their mind. We just throw back to what Sheikh Gumi once told Nigerians when he visited those bandits in their hideout. That indeed, many of them are saying that, look, they need development. They need to also be taken care of by the government of the day. But should that lead to what they are doing, kidnapping, killing, and maiming Nigerians? Definitely not. How he's going to bring these bandits, making them have sense of belonging, and will that make them to drop their arms and live normal life instead of life of criminality? Left to be seen. Of course, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was conspicuous with his absence, but his running mate was there, Senator Kashim, and of course, brilliant man who a first-class brain like yourself, Ruben, and he's been a banker, and of course, when you have first class, it's not something everybody just go into the university and pick. You have to work for it. So he's a first-class brain, and he tell them, yes. You and I were in the same class. Yes. Anyway, that's just an aside, Ruben. But Kashim Imam, he was brilliant in his presentation. Perhaps tells you that if you elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed tomorrow, even if for any reason he's not on seat, he's out of the country, you can get a very effective representation from his vice if they win the ticket. But his pitch is anchored on the fact that what Tinubu has done in Lagos, what I did in Borno, will replicate in when we become when we take over as president and vice president of Nigeria. But again, you need to take a fine-tooth comb to look at the things done in Lagos and the things done in Borno to know whether just bringing the Lagos template to the federal level is what we desire at this time, because of course there are many things happening in Lagos many people are also not happy about. How you raise your revenue, yes, which has always been one of the high points of Tinubu, that the revenue, the internal generation was this small and it was raised to so much when a he became governor, and Lagos is now a buoyant state, the richest in the country. But at what cost? Nigerians will always want to look at that. At what cost? A cost that has continued to dip a hole in the Lagos purse is something people will also want to look at. But of course, there was Peter Obi, who, coincidentally, without intending a pun, he did one. When he said he will articulated, and of course, everybody giggled because they know, everybody knows when you talk of Atiku and articulated, you know who we're talking about. But Peter Obi, talking about Nigeria as a failed state, reeling out figures, as it were, somebody who seemed to have the grasp of the enormity of the problems we have right now. Of course, we cannot discountenance the fact that there were other presidential candidates who were there. Of course, Adewale Adebayo of the SDP and Dumebi Kachukwu of the ADC. They all made their pitch before that gathering of learned persons who have converged in Lagos for the annual Nigerian Bar Association Conference. Ruben.
Okay, my take is as follows. I hope I'll have enough time. The first thing to say is to congratulate Olumide Akpata, president of the NBA, on what is showing up as a very successful, well-organized conference. In terms of attendance, about 13,000 lawyers gathering in Lagos to discuss an important issue, both transitions, both translations, the future of Nigeria and also the future of the Nigerian judiciary. And all of this must be understood in the context of the fact that there has been internal turmoil within the Nigerian Bar Association, either in terms of that well-dramatized conflict between two major chambers involving, staff solicitation and all of that against the ethics of the profession, and also, issues within the NBA itself with regard to the Secretary General and the crisis that all of that had created within the body. But in spite of all of that, this 62nd Annual General Conference appears to be going well. So the theme is well chosen. Now, the papers have reported majorly the fact that three major persons spoke as presidential candidates. But in actual fact, Dumebi Kachukwu of the African Democratic Congress also spoke at that conference. Oluwole Adebayo of the Social Democratic Party was also there. Justice Peter Umeadi, the presidential candidate of the Allied Progressives Grand Alliance, APUGA, as they call it, also spoke at that conference. But I can understand why the focus is on the three major political presidential candidates. Now, in this particular case, both presidential candidate Atiku and Peter Obi, they more or less said that Nigeria is a failed state and that the challenges confronting us are challenges of insecurity, the economy, and that this country has been overwhelmed by negative indices, and that the challenge for the future is how to address the reign of negativity in Nigeria. In fact, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar was very clear in saying that, look, it has never been this bad since the return to democracy in 1998 and 1999. And he thinks that he's the best person to turn Nigeria around. He went to the platform of the NBA to articulate, a reform agenda, what he intends to do, particularly with regard to education, to healthcare, and his plan to unite the country, which he says is a major challenge. He also talked about promoting private sector investment, providing an enabling environment, and then you talked about the devolution of power to the states. Now, that has been much misunderstood in the public domain. His statement in a rebuttal by Paul Ibe, his spokesperson, we were told was taken out of context because it was then reduced to the fact that, Vice President Atiku, former Vice President, if he becomes president, he's going to hand over federal universities to the states. And he said he never said such a thing. He was just saying that he will respect the principle of devolution and that he will encourage private investment in education. But on the whole, he made good use of that platform. Now, Mr. Peter Obi spoke about security also, about unity. And he said his own priority will be to ensure that this Nigeria that is in a mess, I'm quoting him directly, needs to be rescued. And I think on that score, many Nigerians will agree with him that this country needs to be rescued. He identified bad leadership as a problem that they were dealing with, and all of us talk about that. And he says this country needs to transit from a highly insecure state to a highly secure state. More importantly, Mr. Peter Obi made the point that the next election should not be about tribe or religion, but character and competence. And that is for the Nigerian people to decide. Whoever is going to lead Nigeria next, certainly, must be competent. Nobody can argue with that. Whoever is going to lead Nigeria next must have character. I don't think we can argue with that.
No, you can't argue with that.
So both of them, did a good job of criticizing the present dispensation and offering a path forward. But shouldn't we expect that? They are opposition figures. So when it came to the turn of Kashim Shettima, former governor of Borno State, running mate to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress, he of course did not criticize the present dispensation. That would have been strange. He was campaigning on that platform on the record of his good self and also Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Lagos State. And he was saying that he, having been governor of Borno State, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, having been governor of Lagos State, with their combined records, they would move Nigeria forward. And that he even thinks, selling his principal, that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the man to beat because of his skill set. He told his audience, follow the man, way no road. And that they will deal with issues also of economy, ecology, and security, and change the narrative of leadership. Maybe in that regard, he agreed with Mr. Peter Obi that bad leadership is a problem in a roundabout manner. But it was the most,
which has that in as many words,
the most oratorical, of the trio that first spoke. Well, of course, the papers have not given us the report of the details from Wale Adebayo, but he spoke about crude oil theft, which is also a major point, that the lawyers will probably need to focus upon, because crude oil theft, as we did yesterday, we tried to highlight it as a major problem for Nigeria. But for me, beyond the politicians, a major high point would seem to have been the contribution by Chimamanda Adichie, the novelist, the superstar, writer, storyteller, who gave the keynote speech. And she addressed the second part of the theme of that conference about the rule of law. She said, look, no society can make progress if you don't have justice, if you don't have the rule of law. And a part of the problem we have here is that, look, the rule of law is being abused, and as a result, Nigeria is in disarray. And she called on the Nigerian Bar Association to give Nigerians heroes. This was the same organization that used to produce heroes. Gani Fawehimi, Alawa Kabashorun, and all these
Tunji Braithwaite.
Tunji Braithwaite, the mosquito, or is it the cockroach? Don't worry, he's my father. I don't want to make a joke out of his significant contribution to Nigerian politics. But, she made that point. And that is a way of challenging the Nigerian Bar Association to play its role. Many members of the association will readily admit that under Olumide Akpata, there has been some effort to demonstrate dynamism, common sense, commitment, to re-energize the youth base of that, important institutions. But, this is not an occasion to do an audit of Olumide Akpata's, tenure. He will be here, he's coming here, and he will be asked questions, about how he has fared so far, and how under his watch the NBA has been able to deal with some challenges, including challenges about welfare, which has been an issue in the last 2 days, chairmen of branches being given accommodation and all of those matters. But as for the main conference itself, we look forward in the remaining days to a very robust engagement, and we hope that the standards that have been lifted under Olumide Akwata will also be upheld by his successor. Well, we have another story. The House of Representatives Committee on Finance frowned at the transmission company of Nigeria's officials over their inability to explain the megawatts of electricity being generated by power generation companies GENCOs, particularly the Azura Power Company. The committee, chaired by Honorable James Faleke, also picked holes in the $33 million being paid monthly to Azura, lamenting that 2 or 3 persons might have sat down to commit Nigeria to such agreement without commensurate value for money. At the investigative hearing, the lawmakers, while expressing concerns about the erratic power supply in the country, lampooned the 3 directors from TCN, warning that their seats were in danger for failing to represent Nigerians. Faleke, who accused the TCN officials of not being ready to tell Nigerians the truth, said the officials were trying to twist issues relating to power generation by Azura Power Company. According to him, the TCN ought to know the number of electricity megawatts consumed per day. Ifeni.
Well, what has just come out seems to have confirmed what many Nigerians know, that transmission, since the unbundling and eventual privatization of the generating companies in Nigeria, that transmission seems to be the weak link in the power sector right now, where we even generate, we cannot evacuate. And with the revelation that is coming out from this committee hearing, and I think Nigerians will now know that indeed there's a problem when it comes to transmission, because to commit Nigeria as a country to that kind of a huge expenditure when we are not getting value for money is something that everybody should be worried about. At a time where we talk of grid collapse and every now and then, and hear this coming out of that committee, they cannot even account for what is being generated by that facility. So the House of Reps, perhaps they still need to hold these guys accountable until they have to go back. If they cannot have the figures on their fingertips, then let them go back and get all the information necessary, because there has to be proper accountability. And for once, we'll say the House of Reps, they are carrying out their oversight function on the executive arm of government. But they must get further down to get all the details, whether these officials are willing. We don't want to hear of a situation where after a point they off the mic and the story will just end there. Now that they are having this hearing, they have to go the whole hog to get to the root of what is amiss with the TCN, because if we cannot transmit what we evacuate, and we are saying we are not even what we generate, we are not generating enough. Yet the little we are generating, we are having problem even evacuating. So it means we have not started to even scratch the solution. Until we get to the roots of matters like this, I think then we have not started. Ruben.
Yeah, I agree with you absolutely that it makes sense for the House of Reps to ask questions, to raise questions. But beyond all of that, we have had so many committees in the National Assembly purportedly acting on our behalf on many issues. Some of these interrogations, investigations, they just die are burning. how many of these interrogations or investigations or interactions have led to any concrete outputs.
The mic will just go off at one point.
We hope that, this will not be the case in this particular instance. The Azura matter, I recall a story recently that was published that Nigeria could have avoided the liability of a 30 million monthly take-or-pay deal with Azura Power, which has now put the country under serious financial constraints. So the House of Reps is now probing the deal. How many years later? Former Attorney General of the Federation, Mohammed Bello Adoke, said that at the time, he had advised that the federal government should not go in that regard, in that direction. And this is covered in his book, Burden of Service, The Reminiscences of Nigeria's former Attorney General, which was published in 2019. And he was saying that, look, guarantees didn't need to be given to Azura Power. So in that regard, we may say that, he's right because of the risk that he foresaw to electricity access in the country. Well, maybe the lawmakers who are investigating this will read that book, look at what, Adoke said, and probably maybe, try to seek further counsel in that regard. So they're doing their job, oversight, even if it's a bit late in the day. Second, it is not true that it's only transmission that is the problem. There is problem across the entire value chain in the electricity sector. Even the discos. We had 6 GENCOs, right? 11 discos. Even government is now complaining about the discos that are, that are so heavily indebted. In fact, government is even threatening and has threatened and has gone ahead to take over at least about four discos
right now.
Okay? So the discos are the ones who sometimes get demonized, but it's the entire value chain. And it is unfortunate that the Minister of Power has no clue whatsoever. That's one of those ministries where you just have, characters just going to the office, hanging around. And, right now, at this moment, I'm saying, we saw some dynamism when that ministry was under former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Raji Fashola. The current minister, he just comes around, he tells you, oh, the problem is gas supply. The problem is pipeline vandalism. Oh, it is a hydro problem in Kanji Dam. Look, we need a better focus on the electricity sector in this country. This year alone, we have had the national grid collapsing for a record 11th time last week. And there's no indication that all the problems from transmission to the end of the entire value chain will be addressed. The Union of Electricity Employees, they are on strike as we speak. Oh, they've suspended their strike. They say the strike will resume within 2 weeks if government does not act in good faith, quoting Joe Ajero. Is there a guarantee that government will act in good faith? So it's okay that the House of Reps is looking at the problem, but they are probably still looking at the surface of it. We need to take a second look at the electricity sector, and it's good that the NBA gave presidential candidates an opportunity to talk about the issues. And I hope that, the signal that has now been put out there by the NBA will lead us to further interrogation of the issues. After all, yesterday, as we pointed out, they talked about ecology, economy, security, crude oil theft. Let us hope that, that will not be an isolated case, and that it's not just the House of Reps. Many of those House of Rep members, they will soon be out of the place anyway, but that the people who will end up governing Nigeria are also listening to this conversation, and they will demonstrate seriousness, character, to quote Peter Obi, and competence, to quote Peter Obi again, as he stated yesterday.